right, exciting news in vaccine development. The UK has become the first country in the world to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine for widespread use. A British regulator, the MHRA, says the jab, which offers up to 95% protection against a COVID illness, is safe for rollout next week. Immunizations could start within days for people in high priority groups. The UK has already ordered 40 million doses, enough to vaccinate 20 million people with 2 shots each. Around 10 million doses should be available soon, with the first doses arriving in the UK in coming days. And it is the fastest ever vaccine to go from concept to reality, taking only 10 months to follow the same developmental steps that normally span at least a decade. So exciting news there. To talk more about it and what this means, we're joined by Dr. Rachna Kucheria, epidemiologist, physician and founder, Doc Genie Telemedicine. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. So exciting news, the UK being the first to approve the Pfizer vaccine.
It certainly is. I think in the world of vaccine development for science, this is certainly very exciting news.
And tell us a bit about this technology, because there's been a lot of talk about how Pfizer and Moderna both use this technology, which is the mRNA technology, and it's something that's never been used before. If you could explain it to us.
Sure. I'll try my best to simplify it. Right. So you're right, absolutely. This is the first time that the mRNA technology is being used for vaccines. Now, just to compare, in the past, many of the vaccines that we have are either a little bit of the inactivated virus or bacteria that is given to us, and the body recognizes it and makes the antibodies or the immunity, the other kinds of immunity, or it could even be a live virus or bacteria. In the case of chickenpox, it's a live virus vaccine, which the body, and it's given in a very small dose, body recognizes that, has the appropriate immune response, and you're immunized against that particular bug. In the case of mRNA vaccines, just to do a little bit of science 101, DNA in our body is basically what regulates or is the director for whatever our body functions, whether it's immunity or other things. So, from this DNA, something called messenger RNA, it directs the body to make messenger RNA, which then translates into making proteins to do various functions. In the case of this vaccine, the mRNA is coded for the coronavirus's genetics. So that is already synthesized in a lab, this mRNA, what is being talked about. And that is injected into the body. And that then induces our body to make a similar antigen, similar kind of antigen as the coronavirus carries. And that is recognized by our own bodies as something foreign, and the appropriate immune response is generated against that. And it is the hope, and it is proven in the phase 3 trials, that this immunity that the body generates against the coronavirus antigen, which again the mRNA has initiated, is what will give us a measure of immunity against the virus.
All right, we're also joined by Dr. Ravindra Gupta, Professor of Clinical Microbiology Department, Medicine, University of Cambridge. Thank you so much for joining us. Exciting news. It seems the UK is all set to get its first dose of the Pfizer vaccine as early as next week.
Yes, that's right. We are hearing that the vaccine has passed regulatory approval in record time, and that the vaccine will be available, they're saying, next week, which would be remarkable.
Right, and people would require 2 doses of this vaccine to be, safe?
That's right. The clinical trials used a 2-dose regimen, some weeks apart, so a first priming and then a boosting component. So that's the way it will be used.
All right, if you could tell us a bit more about that, how apart will these doses have to be given, and also, excitement over the fact that the UK is the first country to approve this vaccine.
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure that being first is always a good thing, but certainly they have, managed to do the administrative work fairly quickly. Of course, the rest of the world will be watching as to how things go here. And in terms of having two doses, of course, some patients will be, or individuals will be given the first dose and then asked to come back at a certain day and time, and it is essential, of course, that the individual sticks to that time and has the dose. Of course, I think that there is some leeway between, when you can have the second dose, probably 1 or 2 weeks, without having much effect. But really, we need to be very vigilant that people do get the 2 doses and not just 1.
And Dr. Gupta, what is the sense there in the UK? Are people, all excited, waiting for the vaccine, or is there a certain amount of skepticism? I was just discussing with Dr. Kucheria about how this is a new technology, and that is also something that, people get a little worried about.
Well, I think not many people will necessarily know that this is a type of vaccine that's relatively new. I think that although there's a lot of press coverage, we're going to be using different vaccines in this country, not just the mRNA vaccine. We'll also be using the Chadox vaccine as well. So I think that I don't think there'll be too much skepticism about the actual type of vaccine. But of course, with all the rumours and people, giving opinions on, safety and things like that, then some people may be unsure. But I think that there are certainly government news items and, of course, public information to reassure people.
Particular vaccine, while there was a lot of news about it earlier, but we do know that it's not suited here for us here in India. It's not one of the vaccines that is currently being tested in the phase 3 trials, and it's very expensive. It also requires a lot of logistical, support given the low temperatures at which it needs to be kept.
Yes, that is true, that the low temperature is an issue, storage, but we would have to really understand better what the parameters are. And I think that, of course, yes, it is more expensive than other vaccines, and so these are barriers to large-scale use in the global setting. But at the moment, the UK government is prepared to pay the higher price for these vaccines, probably because we're in the middle of a second wave, and therefore that the cost savings overall will outweigh the initial cost, and that's their hope.
Right, Dr. Rachna?
Sorry, your question?
Yes, regarding how this vaccine is not suited for India, and
Right.
we can't expect it anytime soon, given that it's not even being currently tested in India.
Right. Agreed, because of the cold chain requirements. We've said that before. We've all heard that. But I have also heard some of our leading public health experts say that perhaps in time to come, we will have a menu of vaccines that we could choose from. Maybe this vaccine won't be suitable for the far-flung areas, but it could well be deployed in some of the larger cities where these facilities could be there. And expense certainly will be a problem for our country, so for our and many other countries. So those issues will have to be taken into consideration. And as long as other cheaper vaccines that can be that have a lower cold chain requirement options are available, I think that governments such as ours would be looking at those. Right.
Dr. Gupta, if you could tell us what is the plan there in the UK in terms of, who gets the vaccine first? Obviously, all countries have been working out this plan in India as well. There's been talk around it. If you could tell us what it is in the UK currently.
There's no official guidance at the moment, but the sensible thing would be, of course, that healthcare workers who are seeing patients or even in the hospital will be vaccinated first, because, of course, the shortages of staff is a problem through winter, and so they will be undoubtedly in the front having the vaccine. And then the most vulnerable, so people in the older age groups, maybe the 60s and aboves, would be next to be vaccinated. So those are the two big groups to start with.
Right, Dr. Rachna, now we do know in India, yesterday the health ministry spoke about how everybody doesn't need to get vaccinated, that there's this critical mass of people who need to get vaccinated so that we can break that chain of transmission, and so that is clearly the program that we are working on.
I think that again, bits of information are coming out, and I think one thing I'd like to say is that the information management for from vaccines to vaccination is really essential, right from the government to scientists to doctors, because if that is not managed, I think we'll get bits of information like we're getting and not the whole picture. My understanding is that the vaccine, whenever it's available, whenever it's approved, undergoes the scientific rigor, will be given out in phases. just like the UK and other countries are doing, first to the most vulnerable, either from severe complications point of view, or those who are most likely to get infected, so the frontline workers. And then slowly it will be worked down, probably by age group, decade by decade. That's my understanding so far. And I think that it's really important going forward, we're at the cusp of vaccination programs being rolled out, that including journalists, all of this, we're all responsible for getting out the correct scientific information so that, this infodemic of misinformation is not prevalent, and, vaccine hesitancy, which is already a problem from surveys that have been done in the past months, does not become a huge problem. Never has the world handled, a communication program that's required of this scale and this quickly for a pandemic. So I think we should all roll up our sleeves and make sure that the information coming out is based on science, it's based on rigor, and we're all speaking the same language, so the common man is not confused.
Right. Dr. Gupta, when we talk about, finally the vaccine is here, and most doctors and scientists have said not to talk about the issue of herd immunity till you have a vaccine in place. But what would you say to people who may think that, oh, okay, the vaccine is here, other people will be getting vaccinated, so perhaps I don't need to?
That's certainly one potential thought that they may have. But of course, those individuals will also have to think that they then will have a chance of catching the infection before herd immunity is achieved. So we don't know where herd immunity will be achieved at the moment. So you are then taking a risk of waiting and hoping that herd immunity is going to protect you. And of course, we don't know how long herd immunity will last, because these vaccines may only protect up to 6 months, for example. And then there will be opportunities for the virus to start circulating again if we don't revaccinate in time. And so, given also travel between countries, that's going to be an issue.
And another issue that is being talked about is whether people who've had coronavirus need to get the vaccine, or, about that, whether it's something that needs to be thought about. What is your view on that?
My personal view is that it's likely that if you've had coronavirus, you have some protection for some time. And so I think we need to develop cheap, potentially antibody tests, for example. We already have such tests. And what I would like to see or do is studies to show that people with antibodies because of past infection may not need vaccination in the early stages and then may be protected, but then may later need a vaccine as their immunity wanes. That's the kind of question we need to answer. And also whether, if this is not feasible, of course, because it's not possible to do the testing and stratify people, maybe we just have to vaccinate everybody. But in particular, we need to understand what happens in people who have already had infection, and whether they are protected equally or better, or whether they even have adverse reactions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ravindra Gupta and Dr. Rachna Kucheria, for speaking to us. So exciting news with UK all set.